Hey, what's going on? What's going on? What's going on? What's going on, everybody? Welcome back. Welcome back. Welcome back. It's been a while. Welcome back to season 3 of Honest Conversations with Mo, the Mo Love podcast. As it's very evident, definitely took a hiatus from the pod, but I think it was more so the hiatus was more so because I had this plan for the pod of this concept of how I was gonna approach it, and obviously the plan didn't work out, and really I guess that overall just led me taking a step back from the pod. Life was life, and but we're back here for season 3, and excited to kind of get things started, and of course gonna jump right into it. And to kind of kick things off for this season, I want to get into, kind of the self, you were told to be versus the one you're becoming. And in this sense of, kind of who we're told to be kind of as we're growing up, how we're supposed to be, the type of individuals that we're surrounded by, and we're like, hey, be like that person, or aspire to be like this person, versus when we really kind of look at ourselves and see ourselves as we're growing, and we see who we're becoming, and who we're kind of growing into being, and kind of how do we advance in kind of that manner of who we are truly becoming, and how do we kind of get past the misconceptions of, or kind of the notions of, hey, I have to be like this person, or be this person that I was told to be. That's growing up, that's certain career path you're told that you're supposed to take because of your family values, or kind of how you were raised, kind of the environment you grew up in, or you know versus what is it you truly aspire to do, truly wanting to become. And I think it's important when to distinguish the two, because I think oftentimes even for myself, early on growing up, I felt like I had to be a certain way, and not really understanding who I was becoming, the person I was growing into being. And I think the person I was told to be led to a lot of rebellion on my part, and but then it kind of led to kind of that internal conflict as well of, hey, am I supposed to be like this way, is this really reflecting who I'm becoming, but when you kind of get past over kind of those overall kind of misconceptions about yourself, and kind of these ideals that other people have placed on you, and these other labels other people have kind of embarked on you, and made it their own for, hey, this is who you need to be. Once you move past that, you really kind of get an understanding of who you're becoming and who you're growing into being. I think that dives into the next topic I want to get into, is kind of that self-reclamation, and kind of that understanding of your wholeness, and when you kind of reclaim yourself and really get that sense of who you are and who you're being, you kind of feel whole. And when you know what makes you feel your most magnetic, and being able to get past as kind of your own internal kind of contradictions about yourself, because you felt, hey, I don't feel like me sometimes, when you look in the mirror and you don't recognize yourself, because maybe you've been playing a character for so long, and I can utilize the example for myself, kind of when I'm in environments where, because for me, comfortability is so big for me, when I'm in environments where my energy doesn't feel, I guess, necessarily, not necessarily just feel seen, but feel comfortable. where, we kind of tend to put on masks or tend to, you know, overwork, overfunction, and kind of get outside of ourselves, outside of our beings, that we really don't understand. Hey, this is not meant for us. And sometimes it's too late. And sometimes you're able to catch it and be able to be like, hey, all right, this is not who I am. In this moment, this doesn't align with who I'm wanting to become. And I can I can remove myself from the situation, versus sometimes where, as individuals, because obviously the importance of connection and human connection, we sometimes tend to dive deeper into the mask, and be like, hey, I'm gonna, find a way to make this work. And we kind of further, lose a sense of ourselves. And essentially when, kind of that self-reclamation and kind of that overall wholeness, when you really reclaim yourself, and really dive deep back into the things that bring you joy, there's never a need for masks or mask in general. And you're able to, always be your authentic self, at all times, in whatever room you're in. And I think, such as, for myself, I know, chasing people isn't a thing I do. And I know I've done that, in the past, whether it's, chasing women, chasing, opportunities or roles that didn't suit me professionally, or just, chasing people in general, just in hopes that, they'll see me or see some, sense of value of myself. And of late, I've been doing a lot of journaling, and kind of diving deep back into that. And where, getting those thoughts out and realizing, hey, why have I, been doing that? Why have I been feeling the need to, chase these people or chase these things, in my life, where it really isn't providing me value and only making me feel, you know, feel less about myself. And I think this dives into, kind of that vulnerability aspect, where when you allow yourself to kind of be vulnerable and be able to sit with who you are and who you're becoming and who you were in the past, and be able to kind of face that, and look yourself in the mirror and be like, hey, that wasn't right. That wasn't who I am. That's not who I'm trying to be. And when you can live in, those emotions and kind of not necessarily mask those emotions and feel like, hey, you gotta be able to, dictate things, and, kind of this being vulnerable and not virtuous, where when you're vulnerable, you're actually vulnerable, you're open, versus when you're virtuous, you're being technical, you're focusing on, that aspect of control, trying to dictate things. And I think when we alleviate ourselves of that sense of control, we kind of get more of an understanding of ourselves. And when we allow ourselves to be open, not only with others, but truly with yourself, is very, very important in terms of your own personal growth. Because if you're not able to be vulnerable with yourself, can you really truly be vulnerable with others? I think not necessarily, being too technical of, hey, I gotta dictate things and dictate different outcomes. Because for me, I can admit that, I've always felt this need, to have this sense of control, because I felt like if I can't control the outcome, that I feel like, hey, it's not going to go according, to plan. And for me, I'm a big planner, but I think sometimes we've got to be willing to not necessarily plan, but just let things happen and let go as well. And I think for me, that comes from, early on, growing up, where I felt like, a lot of things, in terms of my life, was kind of controlled, just in terms of, how I was raised, because of, my health, condition, and, my health concerns overall growing up, that a lot of what I wanted to do or things that I wanted to do, I really couldn't do. So it was kind of controlled and kind of dictated. So then I kind of try to plan by, rebelling and, fighting against it, versus just letting things, naturally be. And I think doing my best now to kind of let things be, and not, not saying, I don't still try to control things. I think it's, innately in me. And I'm trying to, get through that and learn through that, to, kind of slowly, let go. But obviously, it's going to take time. It's not going to be an overnight process where, hey, I'm just going to be able to, be able to be like, hey, I'm not going to try to control this outcome or control or dictate this situation, overnight. It's definitely not going to be a change that happens overnight. It's just going to be a change that comes with, kind of that vulnerability and learning that part of yourself that, hey, I need to work on this. I'm going to get better at it. And I'm going to find a way to get better at it, because that's the only way you can. That's the only way you can, really, truly, reclaim yourself and, truly become whole with yourself, is when you do the internal work. And when you don't allow yourself, or you don't even attempt to allow yourself to do the internal work, are you truly growing? So that was just, kind of a few of the things I kind of wanted to dive into as we kind of kicked off into the season. And then also on kind of the earlier note of kind of the self you were and the self the one you're becoming, is when we or no, the self you were told to be and self, the one you're becoming, when you don't know who you're becoming, you kind of naturally just fall in line with, yay, this is who I'm told to be, so I need to be that way. And you never maybe truly feel like you're living. So you kind of, going back to, that, virtuosity of kind of being technical of, hey, things have to kind of align, kind of according to plan. And when it doesn't, it feels unnatural, it feels uneasy. So you kind of, get more impulsive. You kind of maybe, rush things. Because for me, I can, patience is not my thing. I'm working on it. Being still, being able to, have a better relationship with the rest. Because it's always funny, like, when I go, go get a massage, and the massage therapist tells me, hey, are you relaxing? And I feel like I'm relaxing, but I'm not. So, and I think that goes back to, kind of that lack of patience, and kind of that, kind of that wanting to control things. So I can admit that. So when I know that, hey, I've been this way, how can I work to, get better at, accepting how I can kind of fix this? And not necessarily saying it's a problem, because the person you're told to be is not necessarily a problem. It's just a matter of, hey, is this who you're becoming? Is this who you want to be? And if it is, the person you're told to be is the person you are becoming, that's completely fine. And it's nothing wrong with that either. I think it's understanding, hey, how you're raised, how the environment you grew up in, your personal values, your family values, and being able to say, this aligns with who I want to be. So, um, and I think that's the most important part too, as well, is really, really diving and looking in, into the mirror, whether it's, an actual mirror, obviously a physical mirror, or just really, your internal mirror, and really listening to yourself and your body, in that aspect of, hey, this is who I'm being, this is who I was told to be, this is who I'm becoming, and and if it doesn't match, it doesn't match, and that's okay. It doesn't make you a bad person because you felt like, hey, I was told to, be a doctor, and you didn't grow up to be a doctor, and you grew up to, be an artist, in some capacity. So it's, whether it's, professionally who you were told to be, whether it's personally, hey, you're supposed to have, you know, uh, a wife and two, three kids by now at this point in your life, and it hasn't happened for you, that's completely fine. That's not who you're becoming. That's not what was meant for you. At this point in your life now. So I think it's important for us to know who we are becoming, and who we're growing into, versus kind of who we're told to be. And when we kind of let who we're told to be dictate our life, it it doesn't allow us to truly live, and it doesn't really let us grow or allow us to grow, because you avoid failure, you avoid wanting to make mistakes throughout life, because you want to be a certain way, and when you can't be a certain way, it feels uneasy, it feels unnatural, and sometimes you got to dive into that unnaturalness when it's like, hey, this is actually who I'm becoming, and it might not align with who you were told to be. Dive into that, that uneasy feeling, and see what unravels. So wanted to, kind of get into that, kind of as kind of kick off this season, and then next, of course, I want to get into the WNBA season. I know it's been a while. Definitely been a while for catching you all up on my sports takes. Obviously, we had the Eagles win the Super Bowl, OKC winning the NBA championship, the Young Thunder, especially after I think I might have said it here last year or the year before. Obviously, them kind of officially being the top four team, and obviously seeing their growth, and obviously becoming champions led by SGA. Being the regular season MVP, Finals MVP, and he was also scoring champion, I believe. Yeah, so the triple crown of the NBA, and having an incredible season to their team. My Lakers changed a lot. We have Luka Doncic now, so that's been interesting. Luka recently, signed his max extension, and we're going to get into that, in further episodes. But what did I really want to talk about? Yeah, back WNBA season is back, and it's been a interesting season. First off, I want to shout out the Mystics rookies, Kiki Irfin, Sonia Citron, balling out of their minds for the Mystics. They are just flat out balling. Paige Becker is number one overall pick for the Wings. She's doing her thing. Obviously, the Wings overall as a team, they're still young. The man bun coach, not the best coach for that squad. They made numerous changes from their offseason moves earlier this season, where they completely separated Nalissa Smith and Dejanay Carrington. Obviously, Nalissa now in Vegas, Dejanay in Minnesota. Speaking of Minnesota, the Lynx, are balling out as expected. New York is doing their thing. Aces are struggling early on, but they're Asia's getting the squad together late into the season. I mean, we'll continue to further dive into that. As the season kind of progresses and we kind of head in towards the postseason. Caitlin Clark's kind of been hurt throughout the majority of the season, but the Fever is still doing well. I think Lexi Hall balled out last night against the Sky, leading them, to victory over the Sky. The Speaking of the Sky, Angel Reese has had an incredible season in terms of her growth. Not only in terms of her increase in point production, but also just her overall skill. Being a playmaker for the Sky team, knowing they lost their point guard earlier this season. Was it Vandersloot? I want to say they lost earlier in the season. Julie Vandersloot, but maybe mistake. I'll fact check myself, of course, on that one. But Millie Cardoza, Camilla, she's been kind of, it was a rough start early in the season. Kind of they couldn't figure out how to kind of properly utilize her. And like I said, that was because they lacked true point guard play. And now she's kind of getting her confidence and really being able to ball out. who else? The Dream have been hooping. Alicia Gray, Ryan Howard, they've been hooping out there in Atlanta. Seattle, Sky's gonna ball out. Who did the Sky recently get? Did they get Slim from the Mystics? They did. Obviously, if you all don't know, obviously the biggest thing in the W has been, shout out to, the stud buds. And then the whole, we won't really dive into it, but the whole uh, debacle of objects being thrown on the court. But it's been an interesting season for the W early on. All-Star weekend when I think tremendous out in Indiana earlier this year. Dang, I really didn't even get to give you guys my Unrivaled takes earlier from this year as well. Dang, that was an interesting time during the Unrivaled earlier this year. But the W's in there. CBA negotiations. The CBA expires, I want to say, in October, so they're working through that. So that's going to be interesting as the season kind of wraps up, and we've seen the tremendous growth of the league, further expansion teams that we'll kind of get into later on, of course, as well. But that was kind of a little brief, kind of little overview and touch base on kind of what's been happening around the W early on in this season. And we'll of course further dive into that uh, as we continue on in next further episodes. And then obviously NFL's around the corner. The first, well, Hall of Fame game was a while ago, but the real first slate of NFL preseason games was this week. Actually, set to head to Falcons training camp tomorrow. I'm excited for that and see my dog Michael Penix Jr., the youngest Jalen Walker that we drafted, James Pierce Jr., our first round picks from earlier this year that we drafted, as well as I'm excited for to see Billy Bowman that we drafted out of Oklahoma, Xavier Watts out of Notre Dame. Zay was our third round pick. I want to say, I think so. Yeah, Zay was our third round pick. And then, Jack Nelson, offensive lineman, was the seventh round pick. He played pretty well. Early struggles, but played well throughout. The game. Obviously, the game was suspended. Hopefully, Maurice Norris is doing well for the Lions. That game ended up getting suspended because of Nick Carter's, I want to say it was nice little 8-yard gain. But that's besides the point. Obviously, the game got suspended because we saw what happened to Maurice Norris. So hopefully, hoping for a speedy recovery for him there. But overall, excited for my Falcons this year. Definitely has my colleagues at work will tell I have lofty expectations for my Falcons. But I'm just excited for my team overall. This has been it's been a while to really. I think we were kind of excited with Kirk Cousins last year, but also I didn't know what to expect knowing he was coming off an Achilles. And really, really loved the 3-game performance, even though it was only a 3-game sample size for Michael Penix. But really loved what I saw from him, and knowing as he continues to build chemistry with the guys that we're only going to continue to get better. So excited for that, and to see how he kind of grows in that sense. Bijan's going into his third year. And kind of the work he's put into, the off season, whether, he's working with Christian McCaffrey, and just trying to get, more explosive. We still got Tyler Algier. We got Drake. We got Mooney. We got Kyle Pitts back. Maybe that Pitts and Penix connection is going to work. I mean, they've been, close together throughout this off season. They're golf buddies. So excited to see that. Darnell Mooney's currently hurt, because of a shoulder in the kind of early weeks of training camp. But once he gets back, I think we'll be fine there. Interesting to see what happens, for our safety battle with DeMarco Hellams, Jordan Fuller, and Xavier Watts, of course, who's going to be beside Jesse Bates. what's going to happen, inside linebacker. Josh Woods has an incredible performance there. Interior, interior defensive line, got a lot of pieces there. I want to see the growth from Rugeroro, Brandon Dorless, guys who really didn't really get to play last year. Um, and then see guys, like Braylon Trice finally healthy. Obviously, he was hurt all of last year, similar to Marco Hellams, who they lost the whole season because of that first training camp game, first preseason game last year. And, hoping, see them healthy. I mean, Hellams bad out of hell, literally in that game against the Lions, so looking good there. And kind of that nickelback position battle between Billy Bowman and D. Alford, which I'm rooting for Billy Bowman. I love D. Alford. Maybe he can get he looked good on that punt return, obviously outside of the hole. But D. Alford as our nickel corner, nah, it ain't cutting it for me. But just yeah, excited for that. And continue to kind of progress throughout the season. Obviously, continue to get my takes on my Falcons as the season progresses. So excited for that. And then kind of want to jump back a little bit. I know typically don't do this. Want to jump back a little bit before kind of wrapping up. Kind of give you guys kind of an update. Kind of on that self-reclamation and wholeness of kind of how I kind of having on about kind of of course been, as I mentioned, journaling more consistently. I've really been heavy in the gym and been seeing the gains there uh, and being appreciative of that. I continue to put my head down as far as at work and doing the work and doing what's required there and just feeling more comfortable about myself these days and really getting an understanding of myself these days. So really been loving that. And we have, as we all do, we have our dog days, our tough days. And when we learn how to kind of move past those, we really see like, hey, this is how we truly get better. So it's been exciting for sure. And I'll continue to get provide you guys updates and give you guys more insights as the as this season 3 kind of progresses along. So excited to be back. Like I said, it wasn't how I envisioned this season going because like I said, I had a plan, and it kind of goes back kind of our concept here, kind of I had this plan of how I wanted the podcast to be and for this season, and it, like I said, didn't go according to plan. And now we'll see what the podcast is becoming, kind of what it's grown into. So I'm excited to see that as I continue to really do my best to be more consistent and really continue to blabber on for you guys, and appreciate you guys for always listening in that sense. But before we wrap up, of course, as always, want to hit you guys with the top 4. Of course, currently my favorite album right now has been Burna Boy's album. But I've been to it, like I said, it's been a while. Like I said, Burna Boy's album been the one that's current. I think maybe if this episode was a few months back, I would have said obviously the Drake and P&D album. Some sexy songs for you. What's also been some other albums. I love Runny's new album. It's this artist out of the UK that I really liked. That I got hooked on for a while. Listen to the new Craig David album that just came out this week. That was a solid album. That'll probably be jamming to on the way up to Flower Branch later on today as I head to Falcons training camp. But yeah, listen to a bunch of different sounds, a bunch of different tunes, as I always do. Been consistent and listening to my heavily played mix that Apple Music came up with. I don't know if you guys seen that one. It's different from the favorites mix. It's essentially the music that you consistently listen to the most, and they'll compile a playlist for that. Been listening to a lot of that, and currently favorite show to watch currently. I'm currently watching Dexter. A few shows I watched a while back. I watched a show called Life. It was real good. It's the guy from wow, blanking on the show. Um why am Billions. I can't think of his name as far as the actor. He was on Billions and Homeland. Yeah, Homeland, and he was on Homeland as well. It was a good show. It was an old show. What else did I watch recently? I watched Friends and Neighbors. I watched a bunch of different shows, but right now, currently watching Dexter. That's been the show I've been getting into. No, it's an old show, the original Dexter, I guess, for clarification. Been getting into that, excited to see what that show entails. And then what do I currently have going on? Like I mentioned, about to get ready to head up to Falcons training camp, and see my guys this week, and continue to see the work as we continue to progress on to this season. For like I said, a season where I have feeling real good. Obviously, as we continue to stay healthy, I think health obviously and anything is most important. So hopefully the team stays healthy there, and I can see us shocking a lot of people. So excited in that aspect of things. And then what I'm looking forward to, just definitely looking forward to bringing you guys more episodes. And just taking it, as I always say, one day at a time and getting better. And really, embodying the things I'm learning about myself, and really, putting those into action, and not regressing to, the way I felt like I was supposed to be, or where I felt like I needed my life to be at a certain point in my life. So continue to work on that. Obviously, we have some upcoming trips going on, as far as work, and personally as well. So excited for those. And yes, just excited to be back. Appreciate you all always for listening. Me ramble. I'm excited to hear me ramble for season 3. But as always, I appreciate you all. Yeah, we're back for another season. And as always, thank you guys for listening, to another episode of, Honest Conversations with Mo, the Mo Love Podcast. And, until the next time, peace.